Welcome back to MacroMind.
Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going on a journey today to uncover how money is, without a doubt, the greatest social technology human civilization has ever created. You know, around 12,000 years ago, long before we had supermarkets and stock markets, most humans were just hunter-gatherers. But then came the discovery of agriculture, and that changed everything. It allowed for specialization. Suddenly, you had expert farmers, blacksmiths, and shoemakers. But this created a massive, immediate problem. If you spent your entire day making shoes, how exactly were you supposed to get bread? That single, fundamental need birthed the complex system we're exploring today.
To really understand this challenge, just imagine walking into a fast food joint right now to order a $4.99 cheeseburger for lunch. But instead of pulling out a credit card, you drag 2 live chickens, a heavy sack of wheat, and a goat up to the counter. The cashier just stares at you. I mean, how many chickens actually equal a cheeseburger? Does the restaurant even want chickens in the first place? It sounds absurd to us now, but for thousands of years, navigating this agonizing, complicated negotiation was literally just what it took to survive daily life.
Okay, let's dive into this. At first glance, a barter system seems completely fair, right? You have something I want, I have something you want, we trade. But every single trade depended on a near impossible condition. Both people had to want exactly what the other offered at the exact same time. Economists actually have a term for this. It's called the double coincidence of wants. And as human populations grew and societies became more complex, this simple requirement turned into civilization's absolute biggest obstacle. Let's put ourselves in the shoes of our ancestors for a second. Imagine you're an ancient shoemaker, and you need food. So you go and offer the local farmer your beautifully crafted leather shoes in exchange for some wheat. But surprise, the farmer already has shoes. What he actually needs is a cow. Suddenly, your highly valuable shoes are totally worthless to him. Now you have to scour the entire village to find someone who has a cow and happens to need shoes, negotiate that trade, and then lug a massive cow all the way back to the farmer just to buy a loaf of bread. This multi-step chain of trades was just unbelievably exhausting.
Humanity quickly realized they needed a universally accepted medium of exchange to stop this madness, and this realization led to commodity money. This meant using practical, everyday goods that had inherent, obvious value. In ancient Mesopotamia, for instance, they used barley. Over in parts of Africa and Asia, cowrie shells became the standard currency, and on some remote islands, they even used enormous stone discs to represent wealth.
What's really interesting about this next point is that in Europe, one of the most valuable commodities they used is probably sitting in your kitchen right now: salt. Before refrigeration, salt was absolutely priceless. It preserved food and allowed armies to survive harsh winters. Honestly, controlling salt meant controlling trade itself. Its immense historical importance is actually why the English word salary stems directly from salarium, which was an ancient Roman salt allowance. Salt was, for all intents and purposes, the original wealth.
But of course, commodity money introduced entirely new frustrations. Hauling heavy sacks of barley or stubborn livestock across treacherous mountains was incredibly dangerous. Plus, grain could rot, animals could catch a disease and die, meaning your entire life savings could literally just vanish overnight. On top of that, you couldn't safely divide a cow in half for a small purchase. And if you used precious metals, every single transaction required hours of weighing materials and arguing over their purity.
Civilizations desperately needed something portable, durable, and instantly recognizable. Around 600 BCE, the Kingdom of Lydia, located in modern-day Turkey, had a massive breakthrough. They created standardized coins from an electrum alloy. But the real genius here? An official roaring lion stamp on the metal. That stamp was a government guarantee of the coin's weight and purity. It meant merchants didn't have to weigh and test the metal every single time anymore. For the first time in history, trust could finally fit right inside your pocket.
But as global trade routes, like the massive 3,000-kilometer Silk Road, started to expand, a deadly new problem emerged. Paying distant suppliers meant transporting thousands of heavy gold and silver coins across vast stretches of land. Every extra mile traveled increased the risk of a violent robbery. So you ended up with this terrifying paradox. Ironically, the more successful and wealthy a merchant became, the heavier and more dangerous their physical money grew.
This intense physical limitation sparked a revolutionary leap over in China during the Tang Dynasty. Merchants started depositing their heavy coins with trusted agents in exchange for simple written receipts. And it didn't take long before people just stopped claiming the physical coins altogether and simply traded the paper receipts instead. By the 11th century Song Dynasty, the government made it official and adopted paper currency.
Think about how wild that is. An entire nation chose to trust a lightweight piece of paper over tangible, heavy metals.
Meanwhile, over in medieval Europe, a similar system was brewing. Merchants would leave their gold in highly secure vaults and use the paper receipts for their market payments. But the vault owners, the goldsmiths, noticed something. The physical gold was mostly just sitting there gathering dust. They realized they could lend a portion of that idle gold out to other merchants, earning interest on it, while still keeping just enough on hand for daily withdrawals. This simple, clever observation birthed modern banking, turning money from a basic trading tool into the essential fuel for explosive economic growth.
Now, to ensure all this paper money remained trustworthy, governments eventually adopted what we call the gold standard. Under this system, every paper note printed was backed by physical gold sitting in a government vault somewhere, which provided immense stability. But there was a fatal flaw here. As the global economy rapidly expanded, especially during wars and crises, governments desperately needed to print more money to keep pace with growth. But they were physically constrained because there simply wasn't enough physical gold on planet Earth to support it. So, to keep the global economy from stalling out, countries eventually abandoned the gold standard entirely in favor of fiat money. The crucial point here is that this is currency backed by absolutely nothing physical. Its value exists solely because a government declares it legal tender and, more importantly, society collectively accepts it. This was arguably the biggest psychological shift in economic history. A $20 bill has value simply because millions of people firmly believe it does. Shared human trust suddenly became far more powerful than physical gold.
Okay, let's move along and see how this builds, because it's a fascinating progression. From heavy metal coins back in 600 BCE to paper notes in the 11th century, the physical footprint of money has constantly been shrinking. By 1950, we abstracted money into little plastic cards, and by 2008, it transformed into entirely invisible digital code. Throughout human history, the goal has always been the same: to make wealth less physical and a whole lot faster to move.
The very first major step into this modern, invisible era was the 1950 Diners Club card. This was a real game changer. This small piece of plastic meant your purchasing power was no longer limited to whatever physical cash you happened to have stuffed in your wallet. Instead, it was tied directly to your financial reputation. You could buy things instantly and settle the bill later on, which completely paved the way for the massive, global credit networks that we all rely on today.
And the jump from plastic cards to pure data, that was incredibly rapid. Electronic banking completely replaced physical ledgers. The internet birthed a massive wave of borderless e-commerce. And then smartphones came along and essentially put a fully functioning bank into billions of pockets worldwide. Today, a quick tap or a facial scan is literally all it takes for a designer in India to instantly pay for software from the United States. Banks aren't really moving physical objects anymore. They're mostly just updating digital records on secure servers.
But this heavy reliance on centralized digital banking brought its own extreme vulnerabilities. During the catastrophic 2008 financial crisis, massive banks collapsed, forcing the entire world to stop and ask a terrifying question. If these giant, heavily regulated centralized banks can fail us so spectacularly, who should we actually trust with our money? This sudden, deep loss of faith set the perfect stage for a very controversial, decentralized revolution.
Right in the middle of that crisis, on October 31, 2008, an unknown person, or maybe a group of people, using the name Satoshi Nakamoto, published a brilliant 9-page white paper. It introduced a completely new kind of money that didn't need a government, didn't need a central bank, and didn't need anyone's permission to exist. They called it Bitcoin. This was a direct, head-on technological challenge to the ancient idea that money always requires a central, controlling authority.
So how does it compare? Well, unlike traditional banking, which relies entirely on central institutions to verify transactions and charge you fees for the privilege, Bitcoin operates on something called a blockchain. Here, transactions are verified by thousands of independent computers on a shared public ledger. Now, supporters absolutely love this because it creates unprecedented transparency and frees our money from institutional control. Conversely, critics are quick to point out that cryptocurrencies suffer from severe price volatility, intense regulatory uncertainty, and for most people, a lack of everyday utility.
The profound, undeniable impact of crypto has essentially forced governments to counter with their own invention: central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. These are officially backed digital currencies issued directly by central banks. What they're attempting to do here is combine the borderless speed and convenience of blockchain technology with the regulatory stability of traditional national fiat money.
And right now, countries all over the world are actively testing and rolling out these digital government currencies. Which brings us to a huge question. Will physical cash completely disappear in the next 20 years? I mean, for younger generations, money is literally already just a number on a screen. As artificial intelligence and these new CBDCs become more deeply integrated into our daily lives, we very well might be looking at the final days of the physical wallet. If history guarantees us one thing for sure, it's that the technology of money will absolutely never stop evolving.
Just take a look at the modern world around us. Farmers grow your food, engineers design your machines, developers build the systems you use daily, and millions of complete strangers manage to cooperate on a massive, global scale without ever once meeting face to face. How is that possible? Because money is far more than just currency. It is a profound, universal language. And this brilliantly illustrates that money is the invisible thread of civilization, allowing us to coordinate our labor across continents.
From those ancient Lydian coins stamped with a lion, all the way down to invisible digital code, the physical tools of money constantly change. But its true underlying value never has and probably never will. Money simply allows complete strangers to trust one another. But as we transition into this wild new era of invisible, AI-managed, and government-tracked digital currencies, we have to ask ourselves, in the future, will we still control our money, or will our money control us? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and never stop exploring.